Alrighty, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome down the security rabbit hole to yet another edition of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Winter edition.
It's getting cold.
James, is brutal outside. It dipped into the low 30s overnight. Oh man, I don't know what to do. It's so cold.
Yeah, I don't think we got that low, but it definitely got cold last night.
30s.
Man,
I don't think we've seen 30s for, well, last year we did, but that's all right still. It's not that way in Texas here yet. So
yeah, we're not going to touch that topic, Mike.
Careful,
all right, so
careful.
Right. Nobody wants to have the thought police on them. All right. So folks, as it's this time of year where we focus the show a little bit on we'll just call it whimsical stories and fun topics related to the holiday season and the fact that everybody, if not doesn't stop working, then effectively works from home for a while, works from home, as you see my background. And if you're not watching this, that's too bad. You should be. And so we decided identity is one of those topics I love talking about. I love the fun places these kind of conversations go. Brought on Mike Kiser from SailPoint. And Mike, hello. I guess you're in Texas. You've given that away.
Yes, I doxed myself very, very slowly. Yeah, I'm in glorious Austin, Texas, where it's a balmy 70 degrees. So all's good.
Man, that is warm. I'm jealous. It's a high of 52 today. I might have to put a coat on.
We all have our struggles, right?
Struggle time. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. All right, so where do we start? It's the holiday season. I've gotten my father, my parents a new laptop, so I'm off setting up 75 new usernames and passwords for everything that needs to get installed. And I'm trying to. It's driving me crazy. I'm trying to install the password manager for them. It's giving me problems. So I just. Why can't it be easy?
At least you've convinced them or manipulated them into using a password manager. You know, that's a
listen. We've gone from, as my parents age. We used to keep things on the fridge, on a Post-it note on the fridge, and it became so old and taken off so many times we taped it. And in the move, they lost the password and Post-it. Wow. So in resetting everything, I've decided we're going to go to a password manager and they're going to deal with it because then I have access to it, right? It's a shared application. I have access. They can see it. My dad can get it working on his phone, on this new laptop as soon as Windows 11 cooperates, and it'll be great in theory.
Right. I mean, it's always a theory, right? And if your family is like mine, I have about a 45-second window to get everything working and installed and usable from the time I touch the keyboard until they're like, okay, it's too much trouble. So,
yes.
The struggle is real, right? Like I said before. And, it's always password managers kind of represent that smushing together of identity that we've seen like in the last 2 years, right? Like you may have hopefully been sitting in front of that delightful cabinet, but I've definitely been in front of this old infographic for like 2 years, right? And everything, right? Whether it's work or whether it's a social organization, a religious organization, local gambling, whatever it is, you're in the same place. And so I think password managers are kind of a gateway drug to that smushed together identity where it's kind of, if it can be easy in one sphere, why isn't that easy everywhere? If you know what I mean. And so I think people are going to be expecting that.
You know what I'm seeing a lot more of, and James, maybe you can validate this for me. That, but as I'm signing up, or I sign up for things more, and never mind that everything wants a username and password, whatever. But I'm seeing a lot of sign up with Apple, sign up with Google, sign up with Facebook. Okay, Facebook, hard no. Apple, I don't think so. Google, maybe. I think Google, if I'm going to use anything as a federated identity, it's going to be Google, because at least there I've got, multi-factor authentication. I've got a hardware token. I've got all the stuff to get into my Gmail. And if you break that, then we've got way bigger problems.
I'm a little concerned, Raph, that you don't have like MFA and all that set up on your Apple. Like, what are you doing?
I do. I absolutely do. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely do. It's just I'm not entirely sure I want to give Apple any more control than they are. I don't know. It's like at this point, pick your
fascinating.
evil, right?
That's fascinating. Wait, just let's hold up the bus here just a moment. Speaking as myself, all right, as an identity kind of industry person, not so much from the SailPoint perspective. To be clear, you're between Apple and Facebook and Google. Your best option is Google. Like,
I mean, where you go? Are you going Apple? Because I know you're not going Facebook.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not going Facebook.
It's Meta.
Yeah,
It's Meta now.
Whatever, Meta. Shut up. I don't care.
Meta. I'm in the alternate. No. I think that at least Apple's marketing privacy. Now, whether or not they're actually doing it, there's some aspects there. I did a research project, a talk at DEF CON Black Hat 2019 where I got a phone. And I made this fake identity and signed this person up in 25 online systems. All right. Ranging from Google, obviously, because that was just to get into the dang phone, all the way to dating apps, to, believe it or not, Ashley Madison, by the way, don't do that in your home area code. And she has a whole background.
There's a story there.
But I didn't lock anything down. All right. I accepted every privacy agreement. And I went to Vegas.
As everybody does, Mike. Everybody does.
Does anybody actually cancel that?
No. There was a South Park episode about this. Okay, there's a word of caution there. Yeah. The human centipede. I'm just going to leave it at that. Google it. Don't do it at work.
As soon as I signed this fake woman up, she had an entire profile on Google. I mean, they all do, right? To be fair, right? But between the phone and the location tracking and everything, it knew everywhere I was going, everything I was doing. Granted, I didn't turn it on at home because I'm not a moron. But that's an interesting choice. I don't know. There may not be a great option, to be fair, to your choosing Google, but
I feel like it comes down to maybe more of Google just seems more of an authority from a identity perspective versus like Apple. I don't see them as that space. You know what I mean? I see them as my phone. I see them as like just a storage for stuff, but not a service provider of the like of outside of that. And I'm not going with you either way on this, Raph, but I'm just saying like that could be a factor as why somebody might look at Google versus like I look at all three of them and say no. I'll create a new account and put it in my stupid password manager.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I mean, at least
I don't know.
With Apple, they are embracing. I think where it's gonna change is like this Apple Wallet stuff, where you have credentials to you. If you can take a phone to the airport and use that instead of carrying paper with me, I think those kinds of ease of use scenarios are gonna, for example, like any kind of facial recognition software, as long as it's on the device in a secure enclave, I'm all for that because you're not interrupting what you do anyway. You're going to look at your phone unless you're doing everything orally, which is a whole different weird discussion to have.
Right.
But at least then I have strong off, as long as it doesn't leave the device, then I've got MFA without telling people what it was, right? It's some other source. So anyway, what's interesting about this merging of identities is there are a ton of people, SailPoint just sponsored a survey, a ton of people that are using their corporate email addresses to sign up for accounts everywhere.
Well, okay,
which is just like a little bit.
Well, speaking of Ashley Madison, right? Remember that somebody that did a treasure trove dive through all the email addresses, and some massive percentage was people's corporate email addresses. And I'm thinking to myself, what is wrong with you? Like, if you're going to be a crappy person, don't be a crappy person on company. Like, oh my God, what is wrong with humanity?
maybe there's an expectation that the spam filter and the junk filter is better on your corporate email than it is on your Hotmail address.
No.
So you're like, you know what? I'm going to send it through here, and I'm going to let them validate this stuff. And if anything looks fishy, we'll let them kick it out.
I think that's part of it, right? It showed that the younger generations, as I sound like an old man telling people get off my lawn with a shotgun, the younger generations are the ones that are more likely to blend those worlds. And I think it's a couple of things. One is just mobile device usage, right? If you're used to a mobile device form factor, I think you're less likely to separate, like the more mature people I speak to have this church and state separation, right? Church and state separation between their work and their personal lives, including split computers. They never check their personal email on their work computer, which
what's that like?
I find that difficult to, I don't know how you would, do you have like a controls, like a DEF CON center set up? I don't know. Anyway, but I think it's more that blurring. And I think you're right, James, that the spam filtering is way better probably on my corporate network than my personal account, despite what Google does for me or doesn't do for me. I just find that fascinating. That
there's tons of stuff that comes through there. But I'm one of those people. Like my work computer is my work computer. I don't use it for anything else. I don't open anything personal on it. Everything is completely separate from that case. But I see what you're saying. Like the mobile device changes the whole game. Remember back when you used to have to carry like your corporate phone and your personal phone, and now it's like, no, bring your own device. Everything's on there. Well, and so check your corporate email on here. Check your like it's just one device, and it is that merged world. How do you get it?
You can't separate those. You can't. I've tried.
But James does.
It makes no sense. Because James is weird. I have a weird co-host.
Like I do for my laptop.
Different laptop.
I see. See, Mike. This is the distinction
for
when
laptop.
It comes to like.
That's what I'm saying. Like my work computer. My work computer is my work computer. I don't do anything worky on my personal computers. I don't do anything personal on my worky computer. But for my phone, I only have one because it's bring your own device. So, do I have access to my mail? Yes. Do I have access to Slack? Yes. Those are the only two things I have access to on my personal device that are work. But, right, like, so as we see that, I see that more as what drives that is that kind of, and I know a lot of people that don't have personal computers. Their only computer is their work computer, right? So they're in that situation. I think you see a lot of people these days now that they don't have home machines. They're like, oh, work's going to give me a computer. I'm good.
Well, I went the opposite route. I don't have a work computer. I just do everything. Like we're a completely, my day job's a completely, everything's SaaS, cloud. There's literally no reason to carry a corporate device anymore ever. And so besides, is it, look, I'm not one for this, but I know plenty of people that switch jobs, once a year or more that have to go re-register everywhere because your corporate email suddenly stops working. Is mental, right? I mean, that seems crazy to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's a life choice for sure. Now, if you're holding down 3 jobs at once, like I'm not, in case SailPoint's listening, I don't have any jobs on the site. No, just kidding. You might have different laptops for that. But James, let's say you go on the road, right? Like hypothetically, back in the old days, are you rocking 2 laptops through airport security planes?
No.
Right.
So
like what?
So here's the thing.
In
One,
the old days,
I will tooth and nail drag myself. I don't travel. But if I do, like if I go on vacation, if I go out of town, anything like that, I bring my work laptop and I bring my personal laptop. I always have 2 computers with me.
I assume you're wheeling that around. You're not carrying that in a backpack, are you?
Backpack.
He's got like the 17-inch, 25-pound brick, and it's 2 of them, and he's like carrying power supplies and got a generator with it.
Yeah,
get out of here.
I look like my son in 6th grade, man. Like
that I believe.
Yeah. Do you even lift multiple laptops, bruh? It's that
exactly.
That kind of a workout, like a dude culture combined with. So yeah,
oh, God.
I mean, it's a weird thing. It also impacts stuff like phishing, right? If you're on a mobile device, because think about this real estate on that thing. You don't see What I want is I want all the headers displayed if I were really checking myself, right? Because I want to see the domain. Like, on a mobile device, you don't get that kind of information, right? It's just like, oh, it's from John. I know a John. I know like 5 Johns, Hopefully the last name is there too. But I'm starting to see there's a couple things. The older generation of that survey were a lot more likely to identify phishing emails than the younger people, which is also fascinating.
What?
Yeah. Like the old people are like,
I was
yeah,
like, wheel that back a little bit. The us older non-computer cool people that don't live in whatever Instagram, Snapchat life, virtual meta things every day, we're better than the new kids. I'd like to savor that for just a moment. Okay, continue.
Yeah, feel free to drop this at really, really awkward holiday parties you may have. Did you know that older people are more likely? What are you talking about? No, I think, and there's no real explanation for it. I mean, it may be just overconfidence, on the older folks, but I don't think so. I think they're just used to being wary. You think about, I've got friends and family who still are super hesitant to buy anything online because their assumption was as soon as I use my credit card, someone's going to take it and buy a trip to Aruba, and then I'm going to be out, however much a trip to Aruba is. And so they've gotten past that, but there's a healthy, everybody's out to get me, which is kind of beneficial when you're on the interwebs, that series of tubes and all that. But
Feels like me going to the gas station, like yanking on where you put the card in. I'm like, is this loose? Is this okay?
Right. Have you ever seen a skimmer? I've not. And so I don't even really know what I'm looking for, right? I'm just like...
honestly, though, I have virtual credit card numbers on my phone. And for the places where my card has to go physically be inserted or swiped or, that thing, I wonder, do I even care? Because credit card numbers are so replaceable so quickly.
And there's built-in fraud.
We got fraud protection.
Cards, right?
Zero liability.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to use a credit card before I use my bank card, heaven forbid, right?
Because once that's stuff, carry my bank card. Like I lock it in the safe.
Do you have your cash station card, James?
I haven't really been convinced yet that James leaves his house that
I try not to.
I don't think he does.
So I'm not. You may not be our use case exemplar here.
Once a month, I get gas, and it's funny. So I got a new truck back in like New Year's Eve last year. Got a new truck. I still haven't. I don't have 3,000 miles on it. So if that tells you how much I leave my house,
Sweet mother of mercy, are you kidding?
Serious, I got I don't know.
I put 3,000 miles on my new wheels, and I'm less than 2 weeks in. I'm just like, wow.
That's just Rafa. That's just because you only have one laptop and you feel this innate freedom to go wherever you want. Devil may care attitude, right?
Yeah. Woo!
A Pop-Tart and a charger, and I'm good to go. Oh man! But all of this reflects back on how do we know who y'all are, right? I think identity is encompassing not just attributes and that kind of stuff, but behavior. So if I'm coming in from a new device every week, or new geo, obviously not James, but the rest of us, then, how do we normalize that? How do we, because there's a lot of stuff that's being marketed. And I think that long-term will be helpful. That's machine learning and this kind of stuff. But what it's doing is it's establishing what's normal. And that's been super easy in 2020 because this is normal. I mean, this conversation may not be, but using this backdrop, this location, this IP, that's pretty normal. But bring your own device, bring your own environment is kind of what we're talking about. That changes the game a little bit. How do I, if we don't own the device, how do I make sure the device is secure? Because identity is expanding out further and further, right? I don't need to own your device as long as I can be sure it's secure and it's got all the right stuff on it and there's not, really, really inappropriate stuff on there that might be dangerous. That's a whole other discussion, but yeah.
So, Mike, you touched on this, and I want to dive into this a little bit further. So, this notion of expectation between corporate and personal identity, that line is you said squishy. That line is absolutely blurring. And at what point do we stop? So I asked this a couple of years ago, and at a conference, and people thought I was nuts. But at what point do we stop issuing corporate IDs and just bring your, you personally federated ID from someplace else, just assign them corporate access? Am I nuts?
You're not entirely nuts. You're nuts on only one level. Well, maybe two. First one, if I own an enterprise, if I own an infrastructure and architecture, you may bring your own identity, but if I own the entire system, I'm probably going to create a local identity alias for you, right? And so that's really when your identity exists to me. I may trust who you are coming in, but I'm going to put you in HR, or I'm going to put you in some authoritative source that means you are now employed by my business, right?
Yeah,
I'm
that makes
basically
sense.
issuing an additional credential, right? But
yeah, that makes sense.
An identity. Now, you're not wrong in that, I think that's where we're going. We're going to a point where it's not going to be me handing in my driver's license. It's not a back-end communication. It's me saying, look, here is my digitally cryptographically signed credential issued by the government that I'm a resident of Texas, just like you're seeing with the Apple thing, right, in the airport, or for tax purposes, or my right to vote, or whatever status it is, a degree from an academic institution, right? And then this makes life a lot easier for the receiver of that to trust it. Because where we're going is a world where it's not just who you are, but the details about who you are have to have some level of trust. And so you're going to bring your own, I think, but it's going to be, there's some authority behind it, would be my argument.
Is there room we've been saying this since just before the RSA breach, which has been a couple of minutes. But is there room for a market for a company or a set of competitive companies to pop up, maybe one or two, that are a globally, like a secure ID, a profile for you? Maybe Apple does this, right? They have it's cryptographically set up. It's got provability. It's got expirations. It can federate. It can hold your passport, your driver's license, your college, college credentials. It can link to your video games, but it can also automatically. You can say, "Hi, I'm signing up for to join your company tomorrow. Here is my federated identity." I log in and I say, "Allow this company to access my personal information." You pull that, so my HR record follows me. There's not 75 HR records to be potentially compromised and lost. So this kind of like mega pro. Now, of course, Google's already done that in less obvious ways, right? And to an extent also Facebook, but in a useful manner. So everything from my grocery store habits to my my driver's habits to what TV shows I watch, to where I work, in my grade school grades. Like, why, I know people get freaked out about that, but if it's properly maintained and if the proper controls are around it, and I have control over that data, not the company that's federating it, this is the ideal, because then that way the only person that can lose information is me, because I've given it to you.
Right. There are cross purposes at work here. Fair. Like every major, the big three you talked about, Apple, Google, Facebook, these types of social-based identity login or something like that, they all want to own the identity, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of degree, because the more information they have about you, the more they can sell advertising dollars to target you. Oh, Rafael likes hiking, so we'll send him hiking boot ads or whatever else, or high-end alcohol that only a refined palate can enjoy, right? Whatever it is, exactly. Operational security, that's good. They can do that, right? Now, consumers have a latent interest in privacy, right? The research project I talked about, DEF CON and Black Hat, was doing privacy through obfuscation. And what it would do, it would inject junk into your Twitter and social media feeds so that advertising about you was thrown off to weaken and dilute the information it had about you, right? So I think what we're going to do, exactly, it's not very practical. No one wants to flood their own channel with junk. Anyway.
Yeah, well, kind of annoys your friends and followers too, because it's like, what's dumb?
Well, and now you're getting ads for junk instead of stuff that you're actually interested in. I mean,
yeah, but they know less about me, which was the idea. I'm not saying it's totally big. I'm just saying there's a latent people. No one I explained it to said, "What do you mean?" They all said, "No, I want that. I want kind of what you were talking about. I want control over what people know about me." Right. Yeah. And so I think what you're going to have long term is you're going to have the equivalent of a wallet that's going to have these credentials in it. And really, to go back to it, that's what we have right now, right? We got a wallet, camera there, wallet and a phone, right? But the phone, I think, long term is going to be what stores all of it, because in Western society and digitized society, because it's right there, right? The fact that everyone has, or most people have, some kind of broadband access and have a mobile device. We already talked about centricity. We can assume they have it. Once we can assume that, then it becomes the equivalent of the pocket for modern society. It's got everything, right? You remember the old days, like, oh, I wish I had one device. There was a camera and a phone and this and a book. It's here, right? And so, so why not have that? Like just same way you have a secure enclave on your phone, have it store your credentials, and then you hand it out. Now, governance, once you've handed it out, is a different issue, right? You're still going to need a lot of these facilities because you should never trust people not to resell and all this kind of stuff.
Sure. But so ultimately, the key is you own the data. You can expire it, you can revoke it, and you can destroy it at will. But it makes things worthwhile, because we go back to where this conversation started. Is I can't. The last time I looked through my password managers, I was up over 160 unique places where I have a username and password. Some of them I haven't visited in years. Some of them I only visited once. And it's like, oh, you want to go buy tickets for this one event? Create a username and password. I'm like, why? This makes no sense. But everybody wants to mine your. It's all going back to who's going to mine your data and what they can sell to their vendors about you.
Right, and some of that you want, right? Like James says, he doesn't want advertising about yoga if he's not into yoga, right? Which is fair. That and also some of these enterprises knowing about you is helpful, just in terms of the experience. And like, you want your doctor to know your history, so you want your doctor, for example, to have access to every drug treatment you've ever, the fact that you fractured your skull in the 5th grade, like I did, as I doxed myself. Again, that would be helpful information, and it'd be nice not to have to relive all 40 years of my life to a doctor or whatever. I can just go, here, download this. Now, it's going to be interesting. There's a organization, a standard that was just announced last September called GAIN, Globally Assured Identity Network. A lot of words. What this is if you think about systems that are already in place for identity proofing and creation of identity, there's Google and all that kind of stuff, but there's also the financial industry, which has done a ton of work on identity verification and identity proofing, because who has more of a vested interest in making sure that they know who you are and you can authenticate, but the banks that have your money, right? And so what they're doing is they're working to be able to share via standards within, I think, the OpenID network, basically identities between them. So you can be verified by this bank and you can have that credential proving who you are, and you can use that and hand it off to someone else.
Okay.
So it's an interesting concept, right?
GAIN. Okay.
Yeah, so something to think about. There's a huge group of people who are doing it, and they're all shades of, a lot of people call this decentralized identity. And I don't think that's quite accurate. It is decentralized in the sense that it's yours, right? But you're still being signed by somebody else. Same way a driver's license is.
Yeah, so Mike, I think the answer to this from an identity perspective, right? I've been kind of thinking in the back of my brain as you've been talking, and based on what I said about can't we just have a one global company that does this? The key is it has to cost money. So the company isn't thinking about making money as you as the product, you're the customer, right? So if you're the customer, it makes sense that they would protect your identity.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's got to be a conglomerate, a working together kind of thing, because you need enterprises who are going to be incentivized to innovate, right?
Right.
And then you're going to have some kind of government aspect, because governments, in theory, depending on your political views, right? But in theory, what do? You pay taxes so that they provide services and look out for the well-being of their citizens. Whether they do or not is a different podcast. But right, what are they doing? They're issuing you credentials, right, and providing services for you without making a profit.
Fair enough.
At least in theory. So, and then private organizations as well, like ones that aren't motivated by money, like think nonprofits, that kind of stuff. It's going to take a community, right? But the upshot has to be ease of use at the end of the day. If it's hard to use, no one's going to use it. Your password manager speaks to that already, right?
And that's the key, man. Is we have to solve this because one, we see like the last dozen or so breaches I've seen, the root cause, once they've been thoroughly investigated, tends to be compromised identity, phished compromised identity. Like, where does it stop? And if you start with a Facebook, compromise somebody's Facebook password, you can get, to there, and suddenly you're in their HR system, redirecting where their direct deposits go. You're like, but how did this happen? It's like, well, you did it. Like, no, I didn't. I absolutely did not. And then you got to prove that you didn't. I think there's just got to be a way. And the challenge, of course, as we've pointed out, is, as we, the three of us here, maybe not James because James doesn't age, but as we get older, it is, look at my parents, and they want to do the right thing. They want to do the secure thing, but somebody that's in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s is not going to be a tech whiz. They're they're probably not, right? Keeping up with technology that it takes us effort to keep up with and try to figure out. And so, and frankly, apparently the new kids can't do it either. So, how do we make stuff that's got to be the first thing. It has to be universally simple so that it's usable, right? I don't care if it's ultimately secure. If nobody uses it, then it's completely useless to me and everybody else.
Yeah, it's got to be, there has to be a need for it, and it has to be easy to use. That is a kind of a law of utility that I'm just kind of making up right now, is that you have to have a need for it or a perceived benefit. And then it has to be just dead simple, right? It's not just dead simple. They also have, that's why the driver's license at the airport is such a great example, is that you're going to be doing that. Now, do you want to fumble around pulling out your ID, or do you just want to have your device and then chuck it in your bag and go through, right? People look at the success of TSA PreCheck in the States, or of Clear, right? People are giving away, quote unquote, their biometric information because they don't want to wait in line the once or twice a year that you're going through an airline check security line, right?
Or once or twice a week for some of us, sure.
Right. I was talking about, normal people or other people, right? So.
Well, now where the TSA PreCheck lines are longer than the regular lines anyway, right? Like there's so many people in them that you're like, I guess I'm just going to go over there. But
they still go fast.
So, but is there I'm just curious about this, thinking about Raph, what you were just saying, talking about like the compromises, like, identity compromised, all that. Is there a difference though between identity and account? Because half of the accounts in my password manager are not identities, right? Like I had to sign up on Samsung just so I could download a new stupid app on my TV. That's not an identity, right? It's an email address and a password that I could have made up to anything. Like there's no link to that.
Fair enough.
Right. And so there's got to be that difference between these sites where you create accounts and the only thing you're verifying is an email address that anybody can create.
Right.
Versus...
There's a load. These are loaded terms, obviously, in the industry and the security industry at large, right? You say you made up a guest account, right? So you made up an account. It's for you. It's just a username and password. Did you do it from a computer or a device that you own?
Oh yeah, from the TV, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then they know it. Did you do it from home?
Yeah.
They know your IP address. They know your cable provider. There is a ton of information. It's not just a username and password. They can, if you give people enough time, you can find people's home addresses based off of IP addresses and subnets. And so all I'm saying is that I hear you. It is just a simple account. Whether that's an identity depends on who's doing the arguing, right? From the business perspective, it definitely is.
Right.
Now, from your perspective, maybe a one-off. If I can compromise you in one site, then I've got a really good chance of being able to get into your other locations as well, your other accounts as well. This is why Have I Been Pwned is such a popular service. The guy, Troy Hunt, running out of Australia, where basically you can look up your credentials and see if they've been compromised, because people just reuse stuff. Even if a username, but yeah, I mean, I think I think it comprises the identity. I don't think it is the identity itself. The identity to me itself would be the conglomerate of everything, but that's kind of an academic argument.
Right. Well, I mean, you think of like NATed devices, all that stuff. I mean, Xfinity allows anybody with an Xfinity account to tag onto anybody else's modem, right? Like, so sure, I did it from home. No, I did it from that guy's house. And, I always make sure I connect to my neighbor's Wi-Fi before I sign up for any accounts. My neighbor's Wi-Fi through a private VPN, I mean, that, but yeah, I mean, there's lots of stuff you could argue around that stuff of like, okay, yeah, I did it from home, that's my IP address. But I mean, we have people come over that we let on the guest Wi-Fi. You know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of ways you could say, no, that wasn't me, until they get to your Mac device IDs and stuff.
Right. I mean, there's always a way somehow.
Yeah.
Even with photographs too is particularly scary. But you're right. But I don't think people are thinking in that way. I think they're like I said, they're giving away what they have and what they know for ease of use purposes, more than not. So it's a good question though.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like I kind of look at them separately, right? Like something I'm building up where I'm giving information, I'm providing a public profile, right, of the stuff, outside of things like IP address and that type of stuff. And I'm actually giving you information to build a profile around me versus all the give me's of me just making a TCP connection.
Right. What's fascinating is that as soon as you make an account, they've already established a default profile for you, which was shockingly good. When I signed up for that Google account, for instance, I gave granted I gave a birth date, but off of that and gender, they had a set of 40 interests right off the bat that they assumed that my fake identity, my fake person was interested in.
Right.
So it was just fascinating to see it evolve over time in ways I didn't expect or anticipate. So, but yeah,
it's
fascinating.
It's a fascinating topic, definitely, for sure. So interestingly enough, I guess, my comment on Xfinity, they didn't know the identity, and I guess they kicked Raph off. So he he got booted, and so I guess this is a good spot to wrap things up. And
Sure.
Really appreciate you taking the time and coming on. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always enjoy talking about this stuff and the intersection of culture and technology and arguing about it. Obviously, it's a lot more fun this way.
Right. Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear like the results of like younger versus older and those different aspects of it, of, people like, I don't know, just interesting to see the differences between how people act and how they're willing to kind of click stuff and fall for stuff when you think that it might be a different way than it really is. So yeah, no, it was awesome. I really appreciate you spending the time. And as I said, Raph got kicked off. So either he didn't want his identity found out or something, they really just didn't like him. But appreciate the time. Everybody else, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to check out. We do post some of these to our YouTube channel now, which is fantastic. I love that we got video going on now instead of just the audio podcast. And so be sure to check that out. And thanks for listening, and we'll catch you all in the next episode. Thanks a lot. All right, and I guess we'll just hang up, and it should.
Yeah, I'll wait. It still says it's being recorded. So usually.
Yeah, he can't unrecord it. So.
It's gonna. Once y'all stop it, that's when it uploads. That's what I'm.
Yeah, so I think if we can hang up, but we just can't close the browser.
You think so? All right.
Yeah. So usually what it is you can hang up, but it'll just go to like an uploading.
Okay, I'll do that then.
And
you may just hang up, and I'll just wait and see if it uploads.
Yeah, when you